What's going on, guys? Disco Warlock here, bringing you my first Battlerite breakdown, and this episode is on Shifu. Alrighty, so first things first in this Battlerite breakdown, guys, we're going to take a look at Shifu's basic abilities. We're going to start with his left mouse button, which is your Spear Slash. This deals 10 damage and builds up enough charges for you to deal more damage with your right mouse button, which is Impale. One thing to note, in higher ranks with Shifu, instead of holding down the left mouse button, you're going to want to click it so that you do not proc other champions' counters. Next up for his abilities, we have Impale, which I recently mentioned in the Spear Slash in terms of building up charges for it. Impale works by lunging forward with your spear, and it covers actually a decent amount of distance. In fact, there is a Battlerite that you can select in order to send Shifu further. I believe it's 75% further. However, this ability shouldn't be known as the gap closer ability, as we have our Javelin for that. But Impale does a lot of damage when at full stacks. However, as long as you have one charge on it, it's still going to do more damage than without the charges. So best bet is to always build up 1, 2, and if you can get the third charge off, have the 3 charges, then use Impale, and you're always going to want to keep this ability on cooldown. Alrighty, this next ability here, Javelin, is the most important offensive ability that Shifu has. I can't stress this enough. If you're not hitting your Javelins, you're pretty much out for the duration of the fight. There's nothing more to say about it other than practice, practice, practice. Now, you do have the charge ability Harpoon. However, instead of pulling yourself towards the enemy, that pulls the enemy towards you, deals a little bit more damage, and has a slightly longer cast time. But I'll go into that in a little more detail shortly. Right now, I just have to stress and get this point home that for any Shifu players or people who are looking at playing Shifu, the important thing is to master Javelin. Without it, you are a sitting duck. The other thing is, don't just waste it. Don't be throwing it out there for no good reason, in hopes that you will land it. The main thing to do is to either A, hit the wall and at least pull yourself in proximity of the enemy, potentially stealing health orbs or energy orbs, or even the center orb. But if there's no walls, or your enemy's kind of sitting in the open and you throw that skill shot and you've got a horrible skill shot aim, then I've got bad news for you. You'll be walking the rest of your way there, and if it's a Jade or any kind of ranged champion, they're just going to rain hell on you from afar. So important, practice Javelin as Shifu, and from there on out, he becomes actually a very simplistic champion to play. Next up, we have Tendon Swing. Now, Tendon Swing is basically your only hope of CCing an enemy healer or DPS off of, let's say, your healer or ranged champion that you're trying to kite for. Tendon Swing is really useful when you just want to get rid of one person from the fight, as Incapacitate, the moment you deal damage, it unlocks that effect and that champion is now free to move around. So let your allies know in some way, if you do have voice communication, that you are planning on using it. If not, hope that your 2s or 3s buddies will understand that they need to back off. Lastly, for our offensive kind of abilities that are not either the energy abilities or our utility abilities, is our ultimate. Now, Whirlwind is hands down one of the most hard-hitting ults in this game. If you can sit on somebody and get that full duration out, they are going to be roasted. This is how I like to finish, kills on enemies with only 1 or 2 bars of health left. You just pop Whirlwind, make sure that they have no defensive whatsoever. The last thing you need is showing up, popping it, and Jade jumping away, or Ashka getting away, Thorn going invulnerable under the ground. There are just so many scenarios where you have to be looking at what your opponent is doing and what cooldowns they have used in order to get this ability off. Now, aside from being a great damage dealer, Shifu also has some great utility in his kit. He's got his Fleet of Foot ability. This is his, it's like Jade's jump or Ashka's jump, or basically kind of any other champion's either gap closer or way to get out of things. With Shifu, he gets the best of both worlds. He becomes basically immaterial or phantasmal, or like a phantom, while still being able to deal damage. This allows him to dodge skill shots, ultimates, you name it. And you want to time it in a sense that when that Thorn is using the ultimate, or Ashka is doing his all-in ultimate onto you, you just immaterial your way out of there, fleet of foot, book it either, just basically anything to get away from it. You never want to be using this ability when going into combat. If you're doing that, you're already playing Shifu wrong, and you're probably going to get punished because of it. Now, if you did find yourself a little punished because, a couple of mistakes you may have made, take a breather, because, Shifu also has healing in his back pocket. It's not the best kind of healing, but it is great if you're a double DPS combo. By this, I mean Tempest Rush. This is a special energy ability. It shifts spacebar, but I have all my stuff reworked, so I just pop that. Now, this lasts slightly longer. It's 0.5 seconds longer than the standard Fleet of Foot, and it heals you every single time you use Spear Slash. This is great because you can be, mid-range health. You just need that little bit of extra health. You pop Tempest Rush, and you make sure that your opponent has no escapes so that you can just sit there and leech and just gain back a ton of health while still dealing a decent amount of damage. Another healing ability that Shifu can do is Kunju. Now, I probably mispronounced that, but that's what I'm going with, so Kunju it is, and this ability, just like the Fleet of Foot charged ability, this heals you. However, it's also a counter, so you need to time this when your enemies are using one of their important skill shots that don't not trigger a counter. Kind of like Eva's Flamethrower, right? That goes through shields and doesn't proc counters. So when you can see that the Jade's charging up or using her ultimate or something like that, you're going to want to use your counter so that they proc it, you teleport behind them, thus saving yourself and not meaning that you don't have to burn any other cooldowns to get out of there. This ability is great, especially if you take the Battlerite in which it heals you, because then you're getting just double the healing plus that extra damage that procs when you do hit your Spear Slash right away is also a double bonus. And the last ability of Shifu's kit that we're looking at is the charge ability Harpoon. Now, Harpoon costs 1 bar of energy, and instead of pulling you to the enemy like I mentioned with Javelin, it pulls the enemy to you, deals a little bit more damage, and takes that 0.1 extra second to cast. This ability is good in 3s, in which you've got a 2-on-3, but they have a low DPS or healer or somebody that you need to pull. You can pull them to you, finish them off, and turn that 3-on-2 into a 2-on-2. Alright guys, that's all for this segment of the Battlerite breakdown on Shifu. We just touched over his abilities and what they do, and in the next part we will go into more detail on the Battlerite loadouts that you can choose as Shifu. Let me know what you thought in the comments below the video, if you found this guide helpful or anything that I can change in order to make it more helpful to new players out there. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to join the party. Thanks guys.